if we could just take a moment and give her the due that she came to this country in a way that was to give her freedom, and with the end of this, it didn't work that way. And that's why we're here today. So just for a moment, if you bow your heads. Thank you, God, for the times that you give us that make us better, because we need to understand and be better. Oftentimes, give us your grace, your hand on Narina's family and on her ascent to heaven. Thank you very much. Amen. Okay. We're going to go ahead and begin with a roll call for the members of the transportation MTC. We all use it quickly. And so I'm going to start with those that are online. This was a meeting that's allowed for virtual as well as in present, voluntarily in present. So why don't we start with, I think the first, Ms. Altman. We're just doing a roll call here. All right.
Serving at large.
Lee, on, yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll come. All right. Also, we have Alyssa Calderhead, who is the chair of the PTAC. That is a group of people that give us feedback on how we're working and what we're doing, and really, they help us guide what writers want to have and how we can do that. So, Ms. Caldwell, can you say present? Maybe we're the problem. Over this way. All right, I can see that. So let's see, our next person would be me. I'm here. Thank you very much. Rusty Knox. He just joined us. I see him on the screen. And then we have Mayor Woody Washam from Cornelius. Rusty Knox is from Davison. Woody, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, we will work on.
We're working on video, on sound, but right now we're just going to continue to go through.
But we can't hear them.
I know. So the mayor of Huntersville, Christy Clark. Is Christy on? I do not see Christy. Do you see her? So, okay. John Higdon, the mayor of Matthews. Okay. All right, so now we'll go to Brad Simmons.
Present.
All right. And he didn't indicate that that he is a mayor of
Mayor of Mint Hill,
Hill.
thank you very much.
All right, David Phillips.
David Phillips, Mayor of Pineville.
And I don't believe Tony Lathrop has come today. So with that, again, this meeting is a meeting that we decided to have so that we could communicate much of what was provided by the city to the City Council of Charlotte last night, and we want to make sure that we can share it with as many people as possible. So now that we have done our roll call, I'm going to turn it over to Brent Cagle, who will begin this presentation. Thank you very much.
Mayor Lyles, members of the MTC, both present and online, good morning. I am Brent Cagle, interim CEO of CATS. I have with me here today Eric Osnes, the Chief Safety and Security Officer for CATS, as well as Lee Ratliff, owner of PSS, our sole security contract provider, or our partner in security. We have a brief presentation today. You should have received materials last evening. The presentation, as well as the presentation materials that you received, include an appendix. We won't necessarily go through the appendix, but it provides you more detail associated with the presentation. You also received a question and answer sheet that we pulled together over the weekend. We are working through more data that we will release as soon as we have it specific to incidents along the blue line. We are working with CMPD to do that. We have to collate the data shortly. Should I just say next slide? Okay, next slide. So first of all, we want to talk through the system overview, want to go through the security program, the security strategy, and some of our key takeaways. I do want to start off expressing my condolences to Irina Zaruska's friends and family. Irina was murdered on Friday, August 22nd at approximately 10 p.m. in a senseless act of random violence on the blue line. Next slide. So thinking about the last 2.5 to 3 years, what we've been doing and what we're building on from today, I want to talk through a few of the things that we've already done. As I mentioned, I just introduced Mr. Osnes. Mr. Osnes comes to us from New York City, from the MTA, and a federal law enforcement background, the FBI. One of the things that we did is we added his position. We realized, we understood that safety and security needed to be elevated and needed to be an executive level position. So we created the Chief Safety and Security Officer, and we went out, did a national search, and found Mr. Osnes, and he was ready and willing and excited to come to Charlotte. He's been on the job now about 5 months. And I think he loves Charlotte much more than New York City.
Great city. I just wish I was introduced under different circumstances.
Yes. So the second thing I want to talk about is we consolidated to one provider for our security contract. We consolidated to PSS. That was important. The other thing, and you'll hear more about this today, is PSS is taking a different approach to security. So prior to consolidating and having and working with PSS and partnering with PSS, we really had what I would call a corporate security model, designated positions to be staffed, and the security officers were on duty at their designated locations. It's more similar to what you would see maybe at the government center or at a warehouse protecting a property. But we realize that transit is not a property, it's an entire system across the entire county. So really what Lee has done partnering with us is to adopt a transit police approach to the contract, which is a very different approach to how we have always handled security. It's more in line with CMPD or other police departments and how they would provide police services throughout the communities that they're there to serve. The other thing we did, thinking back to the single contractor we had back in 2023, the spend on that contract annually was authorized at about $5.8 million. So the other thing we did is, as we have been working with PSS to implement this transit policing approach, we also have significantly increased the contract spend from $5.8 million to where it is today at $18.4 million. So really a spend increase of about 3 times. That has also led to a personnel increase, a significant increase in personnel. Thirdly, we've been looking at our cameras. We have a pretty extensive camera system throughout network throughout our transit system. So we've been looking at the cameras and replacing old cameras with higher capability new cameras. And we've also been trying to identify blank spots in the camera network. And so we have been adding new cameras into the network so that we have better visibility across the transit system. We've engaged consultants to conduct de-escalation training for CAT staff. As a reminder, we've also had several FTA reviews. I'm sure you're aware of the Special Maintenance Review, the Financial Management and Oversight Review, and we just recently completed the regularly scheduled FTA Triennial Review. That triennial review we did very well on. We had 3 findings with no repeat findings out of the multitude of categories that they review. Eric and his team have also recently engaged with the Transportation Security Administration, and they had completed a threat vulnerability assessment. So our security worked together with TSA as TSA completed that TVA, or threat vulnerability assessment. Next slide. So a little bit about the system and the magnitude of transit policing as we go about trying to secure the system. We have a service area of 675 square miles, just under 15 million riders. We have approximately 3,000 bus stops, 28 park and rides, 43 rail stations. We have 4 transit centers. So we always think about the Charlotte Transit Center right here uptown. We also have Rosa Parks, Eastland, and South Park. So we have 4 transit centers. On a daily basis, we have as many as 235 fixed route buses out in the network serving 67 bus routes, 48 rail cars, 85 paratransit buses, and then an additional 4 operating facilities, 2 rail facilities and 2 bus facilities. On top of that, we have other areas that are adjacent that we work with CMPD, like the rail trail, that we work to patrol as well. Next slide, please. So I said we're pulling together the data on incidents throughout the system for the last 3 years. But we do find it interesting, and I want to make this point. In 2024, we always conduct surveys with our riders and just with the community, right, non-riders. And what we find on perception of safety, because this is a question geared towards people's perceptions of safety, we find that there is a very large disconnect between the perception of safety amongst those who use the buses or the trains versus those who do not use transit, who hear about transit. And it's a pretty stark difference. 70 to 80% are perceived safety, satisfied or very satisfied in the survey, of those who use transit versus right around 40% for those who do not, who are aware of transit but do not actively use it. Next slide, please. With that, I am going to just, as I said, introduce Eric Osnes and let him go through some of the slides associated with our organizational structure and our approach to security throughout the system.
Thank you, Brent.
So to underscore some of Brent's points regarding commitment and a new commitment to the function of safety and security, this organizational chart does represent the highest level of commitment to safety and security, as my position answers directly to Brent, the interim chief executive officer. My staff is a combination of safety and security professionals, to include sworn law enforcement officials who are responsible for assessing and evaluating both system-wide hazards and vulnerabilities. The team includes 2 dedicated CMPD officers that assist us with CMPD assets and assist us with maintaining an operational continuity. Next slide. Protecting CAT's assets is predicated on the recognition, valuation, and control of vulnerabilities that have impact on the community we serve. This occurs through collaborating with our regional partners such as CMPD, the Transportation Security Administration, and our contracted security firm, PSS. It is working, training with the first responder community, where we jointly come together to plan, resolve threats and vulnerabilities identified, and respond to events as they occur. This relationship fosters unity, where I have witnessed ample evidence of solid working relationships with our partners. We do not work in a vacuum. We work collaboratively with all of our regional partners. Next slide. The main elements of CAT's security infrastructure encompass a combination of enforcement, internal electronic security, and customer reporting systems. Cameras, a key component of our electronic security posture, feeds dedicated command centers which allow us to view and hear real-time, 24/7, the entire rail alignments and activity both within rail car and bus vehicle. Dispatchers constantly surveil transit police dispatch and report out events while providing information that may assist CMPD from our CAT security and PSS teams. Customer reporting systems such as what is provided on the CATS app, call buttons on the train, blue light phones, allow the customer and the public to interact with security policing systems, facilitating communication real time as events unfold. The community serves as a force multiplier, bringing attention to incidents and responders, potentially initiating even quicker response. Initiatives such as CATS Connect and the Bus Ambassador Program allows CATS to engage with unhoused and persons in crisis so as to bring resources from community partners that may be available to assist their needs. Next slide. So during my 5 months serving the CATS organization, I've come to recognize internal and external challenges. Internally, we are in the process of evaluating security staffing and the ideal baselines of security personnel truly required based on the magnitude and the complexity of what we need to surveil and protect. Fare collection and fare evasion strategies are being reviewed as there is a recognition to fare collection and validating fares on the train and bus as first-line security control. Therefore, fare validation will be decoupled from security and become an operational administrative function backed up by our security forces. This will allow security teams to do security while dedicated fare collection teams maintain a consistent presence on our system, fostering awareness and developing a culture that you must pay to get on the system. This strategy is consistent with other transit systems throughout the United States. The process of evaluating infrastructure and security systems is an ever-evolving process, making sure that basic controls such as lighting and signage are in place, in addition to evaluating camera coverages, avoiding dead spots, and updating camera technologies to achieve optimum surveillance capabilities. This is an ever-evolving an ever-evolving evaluation that occurs to make sure that we're truly seeing clear lines of sight and that there are no dead spots. With respect to external challenges, we cannot have an honest discussion about security without talking about mental health. Our transit system is a microcosm of the community we serve, and the society as a whole is experiencing a mental health crisis. During my tenure with New York City's Bridges and Tunnels, or as you may know, the MTA, I had the opportunity and privilege to work with behavioral specialists from Columbia University and New York City's Health Department on behalf of suicide prevention. One thing I learned from this experience is that a combination of impulsivity and hopelessness is a dangerous combination where a suicide can be triggered at any time. This very same dynamic can occur with not only those who do harm to themselves, but from those who intend to do harm to others. This is what happened on that night Irina was assaulted and ultimately killed. Without behavioral cues or intelligence warning security a potentially unbalanced individual, the ability and probability of successful intervention is unlikely. Next slide. So there are 7 key elements associated with our security strategy: security support teams, training and procedures, fare policy, fare enforcement, system condition, technology, social challenges, and education. These all lead to desired outcomes when combined in the aggregate: enhanced security visibility, We're decreasing response times, reducing fare evasion, and we're supporting a safe and welcoming environment while also countering the perception that public transportation is unsafe. In your appendix, there's a series of tactics that are associated with this strategy that help bring all of these elements together. I invite you to take a look at those tactics and the detailed information that's associated with those tactics.
Next slide, please. Okay. So a few key takeaways from our view on safety and security throughout the system. One is it is key to us, the new approach, the transit policing model. It is not enough to approach this from a corporate security standpoint. The transit system is an ever-growing and evolving system. It's a large system. It is not one location to be guarded at the front door. Inside of the new approach, again, since December 14th, 2024, PSS has been our sole provider. The contract, as I mentioned, allows for additional staffing or more staffing. It represents a large spend. And Lee and his team have been working tirelessly to staff up. The contract currently allows for approximately 218 personnel. They are currently at 186 personnel. And they are continuing to hire with the goal to fully staff up, if possible, by the end of this year. Now, I will say when we think about staffing, hiring is difficult always. But one of the elements to the new transit policing model is more training associated with the personnel. So as those folks are hired, they're also going through training. I'll also note that when we think about the personnel that are allowed, that PSS is bringing through the contract, there are three levels of personnel. The first level are certified law enforcement officers. The second level are armed security, and the third level are unarmed security. So again, each of those receive a variety of training, both specific to transit and then also associated with performing their functions as law enforcement or security guards. The second thing is we will continue to evaluate our security staffing needs. As PSS staffs up, we will also at the same time be evaluating total number of staff necessary. That is an ongoing evaluation. It never stops. The transit system continues to evolve, possibly grow in the future, and our needs and staffing needs will be continuously evaluated to determine the appropriate level of staffing. Secondly, fare collection. When we think about fare collection, we think about three primary areas. The first area is fare policy. What are our policies around fares, around how we collect fares, around fare media, right? How do you pay your fare? So CATS has, over the last 8 months, been conducting an extensive fare policy review. We are prepared in the next few months to bring that forward to the MTC with some initial recommendations. One thing I will say today is we do know right now, when we think about fare policy, we offer discounted fares based on age. Older folks, younger folks. When we look at best practices, we do believe there should be discounted fares for folks need-based, for veterans, for other groups rather than just based on age. We also understand that even with discounted fares, there should always be a fare media, a ticket of some sort involved, right? That allows us to be able to validate those tickets, check those tickets, even if the fare is reduced, even possibly down to zero. There should still be fare media or a ticket involved so that our staff, our ticket checkers, our fare inspectors is what they're called, can check those tickets. Fare technology, we talked about it earlier today. What we have seen is many transit systems deploy ticket validation. That can be deployed in many different ways. Along the light rail line, for example, there could be, and what we're looking at are ticket validators on the platform. So what that means is you buy your ticket, on the platform, you scan that ticket to validate it, and now it's valid to ride. That is important for a couple reasons. One, it allows security to visually see that people are paying, right? Because they must validate a ticket on the platform. And one thing we saw with the extensive use of the cell phone, the ticket on the cell phone, we don't know, when everyone went to the ticket vending machine on the platform and bought a ticket, it was easy to tell who didn't. It was the person who didn't go to the TVM. We don't know now. People walk straight onto the train and their ticket's on their cell phone. And so we need a visual cue for our security so that they understand and they have a better information as people are boarding. The second thing about ticket validation is it is a visual cue to the riders that they need to do something to buy a ticket, validate that ticket, that transit is not free in Charlotte. Ticket validation can also be conducted via handheld ticket validators. That would be a strategy more appropriate for bus. It's not possible to deploy ticket validation machines at every bus stop across our service area, but it is possible to have ticket validators handheld with the fare enforcement group. The last is fare enforcement. Simply, as Eric said, those folks who are out in the system every day checking tickets. They're moving throughout the system, bus and rail, and they're checking tickets to gain compliance or to have security deal with folks who refuse to pay their fare. Thirdly is investing in infrastructure. Again, when we think about infrastructure, it's things like cameras, it's things like software systems using AI possibly to be able to detect threats. We've had conversations with an AI vendor who can utilize our camera feed to identify handguns, firearms. One of the issues we saw, and we think that AI will continue to develop and have useful applications for us. One of the things we saw as we talked to that vendor is their software was not at a point where it could identify fixed blade weapons yet. And so there are still some gaps with that in the industry, but we know that that's evolving and will be a tool that we can look at. The other thing I'll say on infrastructure is we have just recently completed a comprehensive condition assessment review of our facilities. So when we think about infrastructure and those transit facilities, we know that there are some things we need to do at the transit facilities from an operator standpoint, from a passenger standpoint. There's also things we need to do when we think about design and upgrades from a security standpoint. Physical environment is very, very important, is a very important element to security. And the CTC is, as an example, being built 30 years ago, it needs a refresh from a customer standpoint, but also from a security standpoint and how that facility is laid out, how it operates, things like lighting, other things as well. And then the last thing I'll say is we do know that external issues that are outside of our control will continue to present challenges. I guess the way I'm going to sum up that bullet point there is we can't do it alone. we work with our partners, and we want to continue expanding those partnerships. The DA's office, nonprofits, Center City Partners, others, social services providers, the county, Mecklenburg County, CMPD, all of those things, all of those groups, we work together, and we want to continue strengthening our partnership because these issues are not issues that can be solved by one agency alone, certainly not your transit agency. So we look forward to continuing to build our partnerships. One example of that is on September 22nd, we will be taking to City Council for their review and possible approval a mutual aid agreement with CMPD. This will be the first time that CATS has entered into a mutual aid agreement with CMPD. This is very, very important for us because it physically states that we will be partnering, but it also, from a legal standpoint, helps us bridge the gap on some of the jurisdictional issues that we have between CMPD and CATS security, and it creates a stronger collaboration between the two organizations. Areas like the rail trail, areas like some of the station platforms that are inaccessible by car. And so again, in your Q&A and in your appendix, you can see more of those tactics in that information. With that, I will stop and turn it over to the MTC for questions.
So thank you, everyone. I do want to take a moment of privilege and recognize both our City Council member, Malcolm Graham, and our District Attorney, Spencer Merriweather. Thank you for coming and being a part of this discussion today. And so now I will turn to the members of the MTC, whether it's virtual or inside of our space. Do we have some questions or comments regarding this?
I do have a question, Brett. When it comes to the fare enforcement portion, are we using CATS employees as far as the fare enforcement, or is that part of the PSS contract?
Yeah, traditionally, we have tasked our security contractor, PSS or others, with fare enforcement. But as Mr. Osnes stated, we are seeing that best practice across other transit agencies is to use direct employees to do that who are supported by security personnel. So they are not truly a security function. They are a ticket validation, ticket checking function. And so that is what we will look to move forward with.
And have we started that hiring practice, or when do you foresee that starting?
We have not. We are working through the operationalization of that, and we would expect to bring you an implementation plan shortly. But that is future state. Until then, PSS does still conduct ticket inspection or fare inspection, and they'll continue to do that. They won't stop, but we will transition that. That really allows their personnel to support and be available for security purposes and utilize the training that they have versus the ticket inspection or fare inspection function.
Thank you.
All right.
Brett, I'll ask a couple of questions too. As far as the light rail and buses, one of the biggest things that I think is important is visibility. And you had mentioned earlier about the officers, security and sworn. I think you said security right now you're around 180. So, I mean, it's like everywhere else across the country. Retention is terrible right now and even hiring. But my question is when you figure 180, then you're going to also have to deal with two shifts primarily. So how many people are actually security or working on an average day each shift, and where are their locations? Are they riding the system? Are they at the ticket office? Because, I mean, it's my understanding a lot of times, and I've seen it firsthand, riding the light rail, I never see security on the rail. So, and to me, visibility is very, very important.
Yeah, come to the microphone.
So that's a great question, and thank you for asking that question. I can't get into the specific numbers because for security reasons, obviously, but I will tell you our approach. Our approach is not only just to have officers on the trains, the platforms is very important. What we're trying to do when we do fare enforcement, we're really trying to get folks before they actually get onto the system. So our goal is to try to make sure that we put enough officers in our program on those platforms so we can check tickets prior to them actually entering the system. So that's one of the goals that we have. Again, we've only started this part of the contract since December, which is about 8 months ago. So again, you know, it's a build-up period to get us to that point where we desire to be, but it takes some time for us to work towards that goal. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, is there any screening process? And the reason I ask that, for example, and I'm going to refer to the station in Pineville. You go up and you get your ticket, then they could leave and go back into the parking deck, come back and go wherever they will until it's time to board the train. So my concern is there any type of screening process, with this being public transportation, taking place before these individuals board? And I understand some of them may have mental issues, some are routine daily riders, I get that, but is there any type of screening process?
No, there is not. So I think this question, and tell me if I'm off base, I think this question, we've heard this before, is there anything like going to the airport when you go through screening? There is not. As we think about the logistics of that, it would be impossible to do that, to deploy that throughout the system. It also, so again, when you go to the airport, for example, right, you empty all your pockets and you go through screening. Imagine that with buses and rail, as you have folks all trying to board those vehicles and then move through. So no, passengers are not screened as they're boarding. They're boarding directly.
Okay, and I just have one more. As far as the camera system.
But I will say, and the other thing I will say is that is standard operating procedure. I'm not aware of any transit organizations, even with closed systems. So a little bit of transit lingo. The blue line is what we call an open system, right? It means it does not have turnstiles. You don't buy your ticket and then have to go through a turnstile. It is what's called an open system. That is very, very common with light rail systems. We are not the only system to have an open system. In fact, it's more common for light rail than a closed system. But even in a closed system, the turnstiles are not intended to be screening devices. They're revenue control devices. They ensure that you pay, or they try to ensure that you pay before you enter the system. It's a revenue control. So security wraps in around that based on camera and other data that they have. But even in a closed system, those turnstiles are not a security screening control. They're really more of a revenue control. And even in closed systems, transit agencies struggle with fare evasion. Yeah.
Just to add to that, that's why the collaboration between CATS and CMPD is so important from an intelligence standpoint. The information that passes between PSS's security, what passes through CMPD, gives us some indication of what's happening out in the community. So no, we're not screening per se, but the intelligence that's coming from CMPD and that collaborative effort gives us a little bit of a strategic advantage when we're trying to isolate potential persons that may engage in not so civil behavior.
I got you. And just one final question. As far as the camera system, does CAT's camera system, is it tied in with CMPD's real-time crime center?
There's no connection there directly, no. Again, it's about the sharing of intelligence, so there's not a direct connection business practice-wise that CMPD is looking at the same view as we are, but there is ample evidence that the systems work from a communication standpoint. We are able to isolate key identification factors of persons that the CMPD is looking for, and we have been, I would say, very successful in isolating that information, passing it on, and ultimately leading to arrest.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll give an example. Again, Irina's murder was horrific. It was terrible. From the incident response, the first responder standpoint, we were able to share information with CMPD real time after that call came in, that 911 call came in, and able to assist them in identifying Mr. Brown so that he was taken into custody, I believe, within 6 minutes of the incident. But that is, right, that information came from our camera system as we collaborated with CMPD to assist them in apprehending Mr. Brown, and then ultimately the video is assisting them as they investigate and charges move forward.
Thank you. We have several people, and I'm going to go in the order by which I've seen my list. We're going to hear from Mayor Rusty Knox from Davison first, John Higdon from Mint Hill, and then Ms. Altman, who is, I think, sitting in the county somewhere.
One correction, Madam Chair.
Oh, did I?
Mayor Higdon's from
I'm
Matthews.
sorry, Matthews. Hey, all those M's get me in trouble. Okay. All right, Mr. Knox. Mayor Knox?
Thank you. Good morning. It is very early in the Rocky Mountains right now and very chilly here, but I would like to address something that Eric said earlier. The results said that it was highly improbable that we could have intervened, and I think a more fair assumption is it was impossible. There were no indicators. I've not viewed security. Those that have relayed some information to me, and it sounds like there were no indicators. There was no interaction between the victim and the perpetrator until it happened. And I don't even think if we had had security on that car as quickly as this happened, from what I have heard with other people's assertions, we could have done anything about it. I personally want to commend the CAT staff and our private security company. I've been sitting on this board for 8 years now, and security has always been paramount. And for those that are regular riders of both bus and rail, I've heard nothing but good things over the last 18 to 24 months about the level of security that we provide. So I thank you for that. I think as we continue to add personnel, it's going to help. And to what Brent just said a minute ago, the screening process would be an impossibility. Could we do metal detectors as we do going into the government center, for example? Sure, but we're no longer on a light rail cycle of a 10-minute cycle or something like that. It would slow the thing down to almost a halt. So, I don't know, other than what we're doing right now, what we could do to have prevented what happened that was so tragic. And again, condolences to Irina's family. This is just sad on so many different levels, but I want to thank you and Brent for calling this meeting so we can bring a heightened awareness to this. We're, this is not flying the plane as we're building it. I mean, we've been working on this to bring a level of security, and I think we've done a good job. And this is just a tragic event that happened. So thank you.
All right. Mayor Higdon?
Thank you, and good morning. I appreciate the presentation as well. I have a comment and a question. The comment is following up on what Mayor Phillips said. While I certainly think fair enforcement is really important, if I'm riding one of our trains or buses, I would be less concerned about whether someone had a ticket or if they were going to commit a crime against me. So I think it'd be good to have more folks riding these vehicles whenever possible, just an observation. That being said, to follow up on what Mayor Knox said, I think from my perspective, and I travel quite a bit, our safety record has been fairly good. And I wonder if you have any statistics on how we compare with other similarly sized municipalities across the country as far as crime.
Yeah, Mayor Higdon, we are working through that. So as we get that data, we will share that out. We can certainly compare that data to other comparable transit systems as well. One of the reasons, when I say we're working through the data, here's what I mean by that. There are two systems. CATS tracks incidents as well as CMPD. And it is likely and frequent that one incident will appear in both systems, right? CATS has recorded it, CMPD has recorded it, because we're working together. But we don't have a unified tracking system. So as we pull that data together, that's really what we do, is work with CMPD to pull that data together and make sure we're not duplicating incidents, that we are giving you an accurate reporting on number of incidents based on both records.
Okay. All right. Mayor Higdon, I'm going to move to Commissioner Altman, if you're done. Okay. Ms. Altman?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank the Mayor of Charlotte for convening this. Obviously, it's been a really hard moment for our community. And I want to send my condolences also to Irina's family. Whether it is a senseless random act of violence at a nightclub where people are joyfully dancing, or in a movie theater, or in an elementary school, or in a house of worship, we see things like this happen throughout our community, and it rocks our sense of security where we live, work, and play. And I hate that for the family and the friends impacted. I hate it for our whole community because we do have a problem in this country that does require all of us to lean in to solve. I really want to thank the leadership of the CATS CEO for recruiting someone from New York City's MTA to come head up our security programming. It makes me feel really better that in this moment, we, as Mayor Knox said, we are not building the plane. We already have in place somebody with the skill set and experience to try to do the most we can to reduce and detect threats to safety for our community. It makes me really pleased to know that we have increased our security spending from $5.8 million to $18.4 million. I'm happy that has already been deployed. And so I have a few questions. One, I would like, Mr. Hagel, if you can, tell us a little more about the threats and vulnerability assessment. When was it conducted? To the extent you can share, because we do want to, protect the system, but can you share where that is and give us a little more visibility to that?
Yeah, I'll ask Eric Osnes to talk about when it was conducted. I will tell you now, before Eric gets up, I'll relieve him of having to say this. Much of the details included in that we will not be able to share with you. It is what's called SSI, or security sensitive information. But Eric can certainly share with you when it was conducted and those kinds of details.
So I'll talk a little bit about process and at a high level what was identified. So the TVA was conducted approximately 5 weeks ago. My security team and members from TSA went over each of the stations that were evaluated. They picked a representative number of stations And we looked at infrastructure, we looked at the security, electronic security posture, and we also looked at the number of security assets that were assigned to the area from the PSS security firm. So we took a good look at our electronic posture, our physical security posture, and the infrastructure that provides us challenges. TSA did an extensive job in delineating vulnerabilities in relation to those three elements, and we're working through and coming up with controls that need to be implemented to address those vulnerabilities. So I think from a high-level perspective, I think that sums up what the TVRA was about.
Let me add in here too, and Eric sort of mentioned this, but I think I want to underline it. We have internal CAT security folks, many of whom have law enforcement backgrounds. Ebony Nesbitt, our transit security manager, is sitting over there. Wave your hand, Ebony. Ebony, Eric, Lee and Celestine with PSS. What I will say is, as we have brought in PSS, Lee and Celestine are former CMPD. They retired from CMPD, both of them, and founded PSS. We want that new approach. Eric, bringing him in, we want that new approach, and we want that to be blended with the institutional knowledge that our folks also bring, like Mr. Nesbitt and others. And so we do believe that as we think about the TVA or other efforts, all of this works together to understand where we've been, the institutional knowledge, but also bringing in those new ideas.
Thank you. I'd now like to recognize
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Lyles.
You have some more
I'm so sorry.
questions.
May
Okay.
I follow up with just a few more?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry. So, Mr. Cagle, as you work through the results of the threat and vulnerability analysis, if you determine that you need additional resources, I hope you will bring that back to the Metropolitan Transit Commission for us to hear, because I know we're all very interested in doing everything we can to support safety on the system. I do want to say that I went to the East-West Station over the weekend, just, randomly, and happened to see when I walked up two security officials who were on the platform, and I took some time to kind of interview them and quiz them a little bit, and they were telling me that they're on the platform, and then they'll get on the train. They check fares while they're on the train. They'll go to the next stop. They'll get off. They'll be around that platform for a while, and they go all the way down the system and then come all the way back. And it seemed like they were new. I don't know if it was a new contract, a new group, but if you can confirm or explain, is this a little bit how it's functioning? I certainly wasn't impressed by them. They had a lot to share with how they are, surveilling the space and confirming that people do have tickets, because I agree that we need to create a culture where people expect and are prepared and do in fact pay for their fares. And I'll just take another opportunity to suggest that we have branding inside our train that reminds people that it's the law, it's required, you have to pay, to send a lot of messages to sort of undo the perception that you are allowed to ride for free. I feel like we need to invest some more energy around that. But I'd like to hear a little bit about if there's a new security firm or a new subcontractor that has been on the job, and how you think that might be a part of this ecosystem.
Yes. Thank you for the question. What we try to do, again, take a approach where we can kind of isolate the system into zones and be able to place our personnel in those zones. so that they are not riding from UNCC all the way down to 485. We can actually keep things concentrated in a certain area. What we did was created 3 districts. We have the Northern District, the Central District, and the Southern District. And within those districts, we created zones. So you have a zone that runs from 45 up to Woodlawn, and then another zone that runs from that point all the way up to Bland. So that incorporates the facilities and the line within that district. We have a district commander that is responsible for that district, and then, of course, he has supervisors and then officers assigned to those areas as well. So the theory of what we're trying to do is no different from what we did at the police department with CMPD. If we can keep our officers that are assigned to those zones in those zones, that means they can touch those platforms and those riders more often, more frequently, than trying to have them police the whole system. And so with that model, we feel like that's the best approach going forward. And when we're fully staffed, you'll see more of a presence. You'll see more officers working specifically in their zones and having more contact with our riders. Did that answer your question?
The other thing I'll remind folks of when we think about transit, and I think this is a good reminder. So as Lee said, as those folks are assigned to their zones and their districts, each of those districts are different. The security approach and needs of the Northern District is different than the Southern or the Central. And even within those districts, the zones can be very different. 485 to Woodlawn is not the same as Woodlawn to Bland. Very different. So as those officers, those security personnel become familiar with the zones and the districts, they start to be more effective. The other thing I'll say about transit is they also get to know the folks, right? If you don't use transit on a daily basis, you might think, well, how did they do that? Our operators, our personnel who are in the system every day, they form relationships because people ride every day, right? Some folks come for special events, but a lot of the riders are daily riders, and so they get to know not only the surrounding, but the folks who are using transit, whether it's in the bus system or in the rail system, and that is very beneficial to them as they're conducting their work.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Washam, Cornelius Mayor, you are ready to speak up?
I am. Thank you so much, Mayor Lyles. My condolences as well to the family. You know, this has been a real gut punch, I think, to all of us, and it's really brought some discomfort, certainly to my entire community. You know, I guess as you change perceptions of folks or manage perceptions of folks going forward, I think it's going to be difficult. I really do, because you know, there's just a lot of chatter out there, particularly as it relates. It's sad that it relates to the fact that we've got a vote coming up in November on transit tax. It brings on some negatives in relation to the rail services and all that overall, particularly in my community. And you know, it's not a when you're have a situation where you've lost a life here, that's what we need to be concentrating on, solving situations like that going into the future. But it has ramped up in that particular segment of folks that are not in favor of the transit tax in my community. And I'm not saying we need to do anything about it, but I am saying we do need to show some decisive action that folks can relate to. You know, all this great information. I appreciate the leadership of Brent and his team throughout this process. I don't want us to come across as being defensive of what we've done and what we're doing. We've got to actually change the perception by showing some action, something probably short of calling in the National Guard, hopefully, but to change the perception that our transit system is safe. That message has got to resound, and it's got to resound quickly. So that's what I would add, and thank you for all you're doing. Thank you, Vi, for calling this meeting. I think it was badly needed. But I'm very concerned about how to not appear defensive, but to appear proactive in solving this problem as good as we can in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Washam. I have one thing, and I don't think I talked about this yesterday, but I think, Brent, you're saying that we're going to begin to look at other other ways that people are operating their transit systems. And I think we really would, I think it would be very helpful to kind of give us this kind of a study to say, okay, how do they do it? Are they doing it well? I know that the circumstances are never going to be equally aligned, but I do think that when perception comes around, it would be great to have an idea about what other places are doing. I think we ought to be able to be the top standard of a train system or our buses system, all of that. So, you know, we all have our stories, and so I think once I was in Atlanta and we were on the train and they had a roll call of people that are not allowed on the train. And they make that decision because those folks have not followed what we would say is our culture and our need to be safe for everyone. And so I don't know if they're still doing that. It's maybe just very old information. But I think that we have an opportunity to put before us what we want and then compare it to see if there's someone else that's doing something different. And I think that goes to what Mayor Washington was saying. We've got to get people to understand perception, as well as if there's perception, then how do we explain it? Or if it's not perception, it's really real, how do we address it? So that's the thing that I have been thinking through since our meeting last night. So I want to say, I hope that what you're saying will be very helpful. And thank you for coming from New York. We're really glad to have people. I mean, Lee, and I tell Lee all the time, he's got the better half over there sitting around with him. So he should be really proud of that. But I do believe that this is time for us to really take a moment and say, what are the things that we can do immediately? And what are the things that we're going to have to do incrementally? So hopefully that helps us as the MTC, but also helps us have the ability for people to understand that we can take action and we can change perceptions. So I don't know that I have another speaker from the MTC. Is there anyone else that would like to address?
Can we
wait.
ask questions or we not?
No, this is a meeting for the MTC, so we're not going to do questions. I don't believe I'm going to look at my attorney because he has to help me understand. This was a meeting, we had a meeting last night that's also available online as well as today, but we did not advertise this as a meeting for public speaking. So I think if you are interested in doing some of this, we can probably figure out some ways to do it because we want to communicate. And so if this is what we're going to do, perhaps we need to have another round of this before we can do it the next time. So thank you for asking that question, Ms. Kim.
The memo that I saw did say public, so I'm sorry, I must have came to the wrong meeting.
All right, Brad,
Yeah,
help
so
me out
the
here.
It said public.
I know, well, I don't know how definitions, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not going to pretend to play one. Mr. Thomas?
Sure, the meeting is open to the public. We just did not have a public forum scheduled for this evening, so. Or
So there
this
was
morning,
a
I'm
public
sorry.
forum
Let's
and
have another one first.
Would there be
Well,
a future public forum on this subject?
and that's what I'm about to find out. We will, I think that we all,
It's a serious issue.
okay.
Can I ask just one question?
No, because once we do one, it's everybody. So, I mean, you know, it's like school.
Are all these experts going to be here for that public forum? Because obviously we have questions for them.
Again,
So,
I
Madam
can't
Mayor-
address how it would work, but I believe that that's what we've been trying to do, is to have this communication
September
both
17th meeting.
with the Charlotte City Council as well as the MTC. And now what I think you've said is suggested that we have this kind of conversation with the public. So let us get time and a way to do this and see how we can feel from the next step. So with that, I believe Mr. Cagle.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I will just remind the MTC, members of the public, your next regularly scheduled meeting of the MTC is on September 17th at 5:30 p.m. I was looking to Emily, she said yes, at 5:30 p.m. Those regularly scheduled meetings do include a forum for people to sign up and speak.
That sounds like a plan. So you can come back on our regularly scheduled meeting and be on a forum. We will have, I think, people that will be, everyone in this room will be back here again on the 17th. So with that, okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second.
Second.
All right, all in favor? We will see you November
Aye.
17th. Thank you.
September 17th.
Those of you that can come.